This morning, the Central Bank of Nigeria's monetary policy role is central economic growth and development. The mandate of the CBN is derived from the 1958 Acts of Parliament as amended in 1991, 93, 97, 98, 99, and 2007. The CBN Act of 2007 charges the bank with the overall control and administration of the monetary and financial sector policies of the federal government. With several allegations of corruption and terrorism financing leveled against the leadership of the Apex Bank. We ask, has the bank abandoned its core responsibility? We have two gentlemen who would be looking at these issues this morning. Dr. Tefa Abraham, who is an economist, would join us shortly. We understand he's been held up in traffic. And of course, we also have in the studio Mr. Mujid Dahiru, a public affairs analyst, who is already in the studio to help us shed light to this sensitive conversation. It's a pleasure to have you join us once again.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Except this time without your cap. So happy New Year, by the way.
I wish you so.
And we look forward to what will be a peaceful and rewarding year for both the country and to us as individuals.
Yes.
You have followed developments at the Apex Bank lately. First of all, starting with the foray of the seizure of the central bank into politics and somewhere withdrawing in between and announcing policy changes that seem to have now put him in the path of Nigeria's politician. What do you think basically has happened to the image of the central bank in the last 6, 7, 8 months? Starting with the foray of the central bank governor into politics?
It's been a source of serious concern to a lot of Nigerians, including myself, because due to the nature of the central bank in Nigeria, and in fact, central banking system all over the world, the leadership of the central bank, particularly in a country like Nigeria, where you don't have a defined ideological leaning for political parties, are supposed to be political and non-partisan, so that they do not fall prey to interference by political considerations when formulating very important monetary policies that are supposed to stimulate, stabilize, and expand economic activities in the country. And so it was a source of concern when the CBN governor, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, apparently made attempts to contest for the position of the president, beginning with the primary election of the ruling party, the APC, which clearly indicated that maybe he may have been a member of the ruling party all along. And so that puts into question some of his policies in the last 7 years that he's been in charge of the central bank. And it was at that point I actually felt that the president, who actually renewed his tenure when his first term of 5 years lapsed, was supposed to have called him for a chat. I should have actually compelled him to actually resign and pursue his legitimate interest to be president of Nigeria if he so desires. But that didn't happen. And that left a scar on the integrity of the leadership of the CBN.
I would like you to hold your thoughts shortly there. We will take a very quick break. When we return, Mr. Tefa will be joining us to expand the views that is canvassed or advanced by Mr. Dahiru. Please stay with us.
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, it's Daybreak on Trust Television. Today, we'll be looking at how activities around Godwin Emefiele seem to have impacted on the integrity, the institutional integrity of the Central Bank of Nigeria. We have Dairu still with us. Of course, we have now been joined by Tefa Emmanuel. I hope I got that.
Ibrahim.
Tefa Ibrahim, sorry. I hope I got that correctly. You're welcome. Dairu, you were finishing up on a thought
Yes.
about how you were worried about why the president needed to have called the Apex Bank Caesar for a chat the moment it became clear that he had interest in the presidency of Nigeria.
And that was when he was supposed to be compelled to resign. I understand he has a tenured term in office, and you cannot fire him because that will go against the act establishing the CBN. But when you take a decision to go into activities that run contrary to the functions of the office you are holding, it behooves on the person who hired you to say, look, since you have decided to do this, why not willingly, voluntarily, throw in the towel so that we can move on with our lives and allow the central bank to have a breather and a new lease of life. That didn't happen. And again, issues have become compounded with the Directorate of State Security Services, I don't know how to coin that, the DSS rather, coming up with very grave allegations against the CBN governor shortly after his misadventure into partisan politics, bordering on terrorism financing, amongst many other issues. Now, this is the DSS. And except the DSS has descended into the arena of frivolities, when the DSS makes a statement or an allegation against an individual, it should be taken with utmost seriousness. And again, I had expected that once the DSS made the report known to the president, that one of your appointees, the central bank governor for that matter, has been discovered to be involved in terrorism financing. Even though he has his day in court, he's supposed to have his day in court to defend himself against these charges. But the fact that the DSS had come up with an indictment, following whatever may have been their own investigation, again, the president should have risen to the occasion to call the CBN governor and say, look, while you are still innocent until proven guilty, but I have this information at my disposal, again, resign and go and defend yourself in court. And if Emefiele feels strongly that this was a contrived allegation that has no basis and that is truly, truly innocent, he also has the option of willingly and voluntarily resigning and then countersue the DSS for defamation of character. Except there is something else he's doing there that is not for public service. If it is for public service and you have been harassed this much, I expected him to say, look, what the hell? Call their bluff and say, look, I'm going to sue them for defamation of character, for attempting to taint my image with a grave allegation such as financing terrorism. So I'm going to resign so that this institution can move on and be saved this image dent of this back and forth between himself and some of these security agencies, and proceed to sue the DSS while also answering to charges in court and defending himself. He has to resign either way at this point.
All right. So Tefa, he made a valid point, and resign and allow the institution to continue. These allegations now that are against the central bank governor has indicted almost the CBN itself. Issues of integrity have started to come in, the integrity of the institution of the CBN. How bad is it? And looking at the Nigerian economy as it is right now, and all eyes are on the CBN to see what they're going to do next, how bad is it for the Nigerian economy?
Okay, for the Nigerian economy, the central bank or the Apex Bank is the head of monetary policy. The Nigerian economy in terms of management is modeled into, just like any other economy anyway, there's a monetary aspect, monetary policy aspect, there's a fiscal policy aspect, there's an income redistribution aspect. All these things come together to give an economy a structure in terms of handling the monetary aspect, the fiscal, and the income redistribution. The monetary aspect, all these three aspects I mentioned, they try to be in sync. There is a judicious mix between monetary policy, fiscal, and income redistribution. Now, the concept, when an economy is in recession, you find the central bank, recession means there's hardship. Central bank reduces the interest rate, and then increases money supply, so that whatever the fiscal side is doing through increased fiscal spending, there'll be a harmony between two of them. Then the income redistribution aspect, which works through national social investment programs and other related programs that are aimed to ameliorate the direct hardship faced by people. They will now increase their own cash transfers, conditional cash transfers, all the social investment programs, so that those people who are being hit by poverty and inequality can at least survive. While fiscal policy will increase government spending, public expenditure, so that there can be infrastructure development, payment of salaries, overhead expenses. Then central bank, through its interest rate and money supply, to ensure that people in business can still get money from microfinance, banking institutions to stay in business, and people on salary can also have small loans to survive. Now, this small scenario I gave now points to the fact that the central bank is very important in the economic management cycle of Nigeria and any other country for that matter. So that's why the CBN Act, modeled after the recommendation of World Bank, IMF, and other Bretton Woods institutions worldwide, allows any central bank worldwide to have operational independence and autonomy in general in terms of its policy. That's why the central bank can decide money supply today, how much to withdraw, treasury bills, and all those things. The essence is to ensure that the liquidity preference aspect of the economy stays on equilibrium. It should not be distorted by any other sentiment. Financial market is sensitive to anything the central bank does. You want to avoid the situation of panic withdrawals from banks. You don't want a situation whereby even if you reduce interest rate, nobody is borrowing to loan because they don't trust the policy around the interest rate. You don't want a situation whereby shareholders of banks, bank and non-bank financial institutions are beginning to have second thought about the governance around the financial and economic space. That is why it's important for the central bank to always remain professional and neutral. So as an institution, I believe that the Central Bank Act 2007, that's been amended several times, protect the CBN to ensure that it continues to play its unique role of being the banker to last resort to the government, continue to play its role on ensuring price stability in terms of inflation and exchange rate. Already, you say inflation is above 20% already. The central bank has a lot of work to do to ensure that our inflation rate does not only come down, but remains stable and runs towards attaining that single-digit level. Exchange rate is also not doing very well in terms of how it's changing. So the whole essence is that the noise around the CBN needs to be minimized so that its primary function as Apex Bank, as monetary policy head, will run smoothly to ensure that our economy returns to equilibrium.
Okay, you talk about the noise around the central bank being minimized. And the Establishing Act and how that Establishing Act essentially tries to guarantee the independence of the central bank and inoculates it from all sorts of interventions from the federal government. But now we have a situation occasioned by the leadership of the central bank. It appears to have been doing quite a number of the things you mentioned, whether it is, in discharging its monetary policy role, whether it is in money supply, as we saw between COVID and today, where they have dispensed with over 10 trillion in interventions. And we've seen the hawkish stand in interest rates responding to what's happening globally and all of that. We seem to have seen that. But this is a country of several mix. And the Establishing Act also contemplates the neutrality of the head of that institution. We already are seeing the kind of crisis of confidence we have with the electoral body saying they are now making alternative arrangements to store sensitive materials away from the central bank because people have expressed concern that he is now an interested party, however he chooses to deny that. So how much of this contagion, from what has happened to him has impacted, spilled over on the confidence that is supposed to be reposed on the Apex Bank?
Economics is premised on confidence, consumer confidence, investors' confidence. It's important to ensure that anything you do, an economy does, to sustain consumer confidence and investors' confidence should be done. In other words, when there's the income is split into consumption and investment, or consumption and savings, then there's a savings income identity. So it's assumed that people who are consumers should spend so that those producing can sell, and then there's this circular flow of money. There's an export component, income, depending on how you interact with the economy, with the consumption, with investment, with government, and then the open sector, which is the import-export aspect. Now, the bottom line here is that regarding the economy, private sector, government sector, everybody waits for CBN. CBN is like the Japanese flying goose theory. CBN is the one at the edge of the triangle. Any policy from central bank has a spillover effect, which we always expect it to be positive anyway, on the economy. But economics is all about trade-off. If you want higher interest rates, they must have low level of income. If you want high consumption rate, they must have low level of savings.
Okay.
So the idea is that the leadership angle for the central bank right now is something that needs to be, I'm trying to leave that aspect for the political economists and those who understand public affairs. But I'm just trying to emphasize how important it is, because if this little thing, that this idea about this whole argument around the CBN governor, if it's not managed well by our political managers, it has an adverse effect, spillover effect on the economy. And once it distorts consumer confidence, nobody wants to take their money to bank again. They begin to have nightmares about bank collapse. Investors begin to doubt whether even the interest rate that's operating in the market right now is a shadow one.
Absolutely.
So the economy will not respond to any stimulus, and thereby stagnating an economy that needs growth from every source right now.
Thank you very much. Dairu, you have listened to Tefa, and that's one area of concern for us. He came in, like you described it, a misadventure into politics, and pulled out. And the central bank continued. And it sort of appeared like we had forgotten that he made that adventure until he came up with a policy, which appeared to now bite on the political space heavily. And so the managers are now seem to now want to use the sins of the past against him. How does this disrupt from what we want to achieve? He's talked about excess money in circulation, especially outside the banking system, which can be used for anything, terrorism, financing, and whatever, and you don't want that for economy, and how that weakens even the transmission of monetary policy, because it then means that whatever you are transmitting is on the few amounts that you have in the vault rather than what is in the informal. Is it that the policies are bad, or the politicians have found a way to just cripple everything on account of his misadventure, if I would borrow your words?
Okay, first, let us address the issue of misadventure and relate it to the issues of the current policies on withdrawal limits and the Naira redesign. Why we should be concerned is, for somebody who wanted to be president in 2023, it means he must have been planning and doing certain things, using his office to buy support among the political class. Now, there's a memo that's circulating around social media from the DSS to banks, wanting to find out who and who got forex allocation, where, why, and how. And this is part of the inquest into his activities as CBN governor. If you look at the forex regime management under the current CBN governor, particularly from 2015, it has been a subject of controversy. And the controversy has resulted into a steady devaluation of the Naira at a rate that is very unhealthy for the economy, especially one that is an import-dependent economy. And so if you look at some of his practical activities, it tells you that so many things may have been happening such that the CBN policies, monetary policies that are supposed to be motivated by economic common sense, appear to have been skewed on the altar of political considerations. And so this has distorted the entire economic ecosystem in Nigeria, because as the economist here rightly pointed out, the CBN appears to be the most important fulcrum in the triangle of economic management system in Nigeria, because it fixes interest rates, it fixes forex rates, and it's in charge of money supply, which funds the economy entirely. And so it's a thing of concern. However, his latest policies, for example, on Naira redesign and the withdrawal limit. One thing I'm sure of is this: the withdrawal limit will not prevent vote buying at the polls in 2023. Even if you reduce the limit to ₦1 per day. Politicians have stored enough foreign exchange arising from the mismanagement, again, of the forex regime of this current leadership of the central bank, enough to just change these monies at the various units to smaller allowable limits of withdrawal to share the polling unit. So nobody should be so concerned about whether they should prevent vote buying or not at the poll. It will not. It will only maybe cause hardship for ordinary Nigerians, considering the fact that, was to speak, as at yesterday, POS vendors, operators, and some ATMs are still dispensing old Naira notes. And the deadline is just less than 2 weeks away. So the rush, the chaos, the stress on Nigerians, particularly in areas where you have limited banking services, that will be brought upon them is what should be concerned, or should be of concern to us. So you begin to wonder, are people thinking right at the helm of affairs at the CBN? This is another cause for concern, because if somebody is so preoccupied with political activity that he does not seem to fine-tune his policies enough to be seamlessly implemented. And you see, Naira redesign itself is not a bad policy. Again, what is the cost of executing this policy at this time that Nigeria is in serious financial distress?
Thank you very much.
That should be the things we should be asking. Otherwise, I think the policy is a rushed one. I think it's one that will again have negative consequences, because, like the erudite economist pointed out, economics is a behavioral thing.
That's right.
So when you raise the alarm that you are changing Naira notes because of certain issues, you create a panic that will itself injure the system.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have unfortunately run out of time. I wish some of the issues that were brought up by Dairu would find time to explore, but we'll do this again. This conversation is an ongoing one. We will continue to interrogate every facet of the economy, whether it's a trade, fiscal, or monetary policy aspect, as the days go by, to find ways, to bring further enlightenment and interrogate the policies of government. I want to thank you, Dairu, as always, for always showing up whenever we want you to provide this illumination, and of course, Mr. Tefa, for providing us with those economic perspective.
Thank you very much.
Even though the central bank will argue that economics always have two sides, there will always be a different sides to whatever argument that is postulated. But we thank you for the perspective that you bring to the show. We will take a short breather. We would then take a political conversation, and we have the spokesperson, one of the spokesperson of